Well, let's jump into the story of Joseph today. Joseph is said to be the favorite of Jacob, now named Israel's sons. And that's already problematic, but he has 12 sons total, which makes things even more problematic. And to make things even worse, Israel makes for Joseph this wonderful coat. And then Joseph takes it a step further. He has this dream where all of his brothers are bowing down to him. Now, if you have any siblings, you can see why this maybe rubs Joseph's siblings the wrong way, especially after their father very clearly favors him. I think it's very understandable that they would get upset that it kind of seems like it's starting to go to Joseph's head. But in response to this, Joseph's brothers decide that they want to kill him. And luckily they didn't, but they still ended up selling him into slavery, which isn't much better. So they sell him off to some Midianites and take his robe back to their father and claim that he was slain by a wild beast. Now, Joseph, over the course of the next 9 chapters, is going to go on a crazy journey from being a slave to being second in command in the land of Egypt. In chapter 8, we get this kind of intriguing narrative about Judah, one of Joseph's older brothers, and he is having some trouble managing his family, specifically when it came to his son, Er, and his daughter-in-law, Tamar. Now, it was Judah's responsibility to make sure that his son's line lived on through one of his son's brothers. But Judah didn't do a very good job of this and essentially discarded Tamar. But Tamar is very crafty, and so she disguises herself as a prostitute and tricks Judah into upholding what was supposed to be an honorable thing for him to do. And so we're continuing to see this divide between older brothers and younger brothers that we've been talking about, where Judah and his sons are not making wise decisions. Now, Joseph was serving as a slave in a man named Potiphar's house. Eventually, he becomes the caretaker of Potiphar's house, and Potiphar's wife becomes very taken with Joseph and tries to sleep with him. Now, Joseph turns her down, but she flips the narrative on him. Even though he's making the right decisions, bad things are still happening to him. So she frames him, and he gets sent to prison. While he's in prison, Joseph meets these 2 characters, the cupbearer and the baker. Now, they both have dreams that Joseph interprets for them. The cupbearer has a favorable dream, and the baker not so much. Now, we jump forward 2 years later. Joseph is still in prison, but the cupbearer has been serving by Pharaoh's side, when Pharaoh starts to have dreams that need interpreting as well. Pharaoh called for wise men and magicians, but none of them could interpret these dreams, and that's when the cupbearer remembered Joseph. So Joseph interprets the Pharaoh's dream, and he warns him of a coming danger that they need to prepare for. And so Pharaoh elevates him to second in charge in all of Egypt. And Joseph makes it very clear to Pharaoh who the God is that's behind this. It's not the gods of Egypt. It's the God that Joseph follows, the one true God. And so Joseph begins to carry out this plan during 7 years of abundance to prepare for 7 years of famine. And that should remind us of these periods of 7 days that we've previously discussed in past videos. And we see that specifically in the creation narrative, where there is a period of 7 days. The first 6 there is working, and the 7th day there is rest. And we will see that later in the story of Moses, when future generations of Israelites make their way out of Egypt and need to harvest food for 6 days to prepare for the 7th day, where there will be no food to harvest. It's the same exact thing happening here, except these are periods of 7 years. Now, during this time of famine, it's fairly obvious that Joseph's brothers have not budgeted as well as he did. And so they end up going to Egypt because they are short on food. Now, it's very poetic that it's Joseph's older brothers that all go to Egypt. And there's this kind of back and forth narrative where Joseph maneuvers his brothers into a situation where they need to go back home and return with their youngest brother. Now they stay at home for a while, leaving one of their brothers in prison, but eventually they start to run out of food again. And this is when Judah steps up and kind of comes back full circle and starts to take responsibility for himself and his brothers. So the brothers return with gifts in hand, and they sit down for a feast with Joseph, still not realizing that this is their long-lost brother. And once again, we see that the younger brother is being favored above the older brothers, because Benjamin's portion at the feast was 5 times as much as anyone else's. Now Joseph sends them on their way with food again, but plants a cup with Benjamin's things. And he sends his servants to go and catch up with his brothers and bring them back, and accuses them of stealing from him. Now Judah once again stands up and tries to defend Benjamin so that Benjamin would not suffer the same fate as his brother Joseph. And finally, Judah offers to stay on his brother Benjamin's behalf. And seeing his brother come full circle from the person who sold him into slavery to now the one who's willing to protect Benjamin was too much for Joseph. He breaks down, he drops the ruse, and he reveals who he is. And he recounts the tale of everything that's happened to him, but doesn't credit it to the evil of his brothers, but to the wisdom of God that allowed him to be in this place and sustain his family through this famine. So Joseph's brothers go back home and bring back Jacob with them, where God speaks to Jacob, and Jacob's story also starts to come full circle here, where God reaffirms the promise that he made to Abraham, this time to Jacob, and promises that he will become a great nation. And this is where we get the 12 tribes of Israel. And as Jacob is about to die, he decides to bless Joseph's 2 sons. But Joseph had his sons on opposite sides from where they were intended to be. So Jacob ends up blessing the younger brother over the older brother, which is very similar to what happened between Jacob and his brother Esau. But Joseph wasn't trying to deceive Jacob, and so he tries to redirect things, but Jacob further emphasizes, no, the younger brother is going to be the one who carries the torch through the generations. In chapter 49, Jacob goes on to bless his sons, some more than others. Some get very positive blessings, some not so much. Some also get much more detailed blessings, and that should give us a clue as to the lineage that we should follow as we continue reading through Scripture. And so while all 12 of these brothers go on to have their own tribes that comprise the 12 tribes of Israel, Judah is a brother that we've focused on already that also gets a much more lengthy blessing than some of his other brothers. And finally, in chapter 50, Jacob passes away and has Joseph promise to forgive his brothers. And then we fast forward to where Joseph is passing away, and he has his descendants promise to carry his bones out of Egypt. That is going to be it before a bit of a time skip where we will come back to the nation of Israel and how they have grown as a nation in the land of Egypt. So please stay tuned for our next video.